Hi, I'm Lucia Lee. I'm an educator and creative writer.
And I'm JT Neal. I'm an organizer, writer, poli-sci nerd, and just a general geek. And you're listening to What's Wrong Baltimore,
Our podcast where we talk about Baltimore
the issues that affect the people who live in it.
and the implications they carry to all American cities.
Welcome.
We're here on the theme of memes, virality, algorithms, and Black Twitter with our special guest, Blanche, full-time corporate baddie and part-time foodie. So cute. Hey, how's it going?
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me on the
Yeah.
pod. Pod.
Yes,
The pod. I love
the
that.
pod.
Um, would you mind kind of delving a little bit into your knowledge and experience around this specific theme of algorithms, virality, and Black Twitter?
Sure. I'll say I'm someone who's chronically online, probably too much. One of my New Year's resolutions is to spend less time online. I was a member of Black Twitter, deleted my account in November for reasons. And fun fact about me, I actually was a Reddit mod for Black People Twitter for a couple years. On Reddit, yeah.
The Reddit.
The respect.
Not anymore, but
Yeah, but
I
JT
was
is
a Reddit
like
mod.
really impressed.
I mean, that's impressive.
You like mentioned it offhand, and I never forgot. I was like, oh my God, this is so legit.
Yeah, Reddit really is kind of like at the forefront of the internet. Not exactly, it's not they build themselves as the front page of the internet, but like
Yeah.
they are a source of a great many concepts and memes and internet things.
It's a great archive too of like I was trying to find like reference for memes and I'm like, what was popular? And it's crazy to think some of the things that were popular what we were talking about maybe 4 years ago. I was like, what does this even mean? And then you have to like go in the comments and be like, oh yeah, that did happen. Yeah, it's interesting.
That's hilarious. I like Reddit because it is so old fashioned. It ages well, if you know what I mean. Like the layout and like the
It's
format.
true.
And
It's
I
true.
feel that way about Imager. Like you're going there for just images that are meme worthy.
I'm so interested. Are you like on Imager? Do you use Imager as
I
a
use it
social
every
media?
day.
Really?
I
Okay.
don't use it as social media, but I do have, I think I'm at Glorious status. I have done like meme posts. I've dumped the memes that I've collected on my phone or that I've made and gotten a good clip of points from it.
Wow.
So yeah.
For me, like Imager was a gateway into Reddit. So I was on Imager for like, I don't know, I would say like 3 years. And then it's like I almost graduated into Reddit. And now I think of it as being like almost a backbone of Reddit.
See, people who went to Reddit genuinely feel that way, and the people who are still on Imager, like we're our own thing now. Like we've got our own culture and
I
everything.
used to say that, and then I moved to Reddit, and I'm like, oh, I just never went to back to Imager, but I'm happy the community is still there.
That's so interesting because this is like different online, like watering holes, basically, or like water
Yeah,
coolers of conversation and community.
yeah. It's like oceans and seas. They're like gulfs and stuff. It's like all water. We're all on the internet, but we're in our different bodies of water. You know?
Bro, that's true. I'm
Reddit.
curious. Yeah, I'm curious. Like on Imager, I was just a browser of the front page when I was on there. Do you find there are other sub communities within Imager, or is it just the front page?
Yes, there are. It's quite interesting because it's something that I've noticed because it's something that I use continuously and have been in for so long that I can actually see it without like pressing buttons. Like there are certain people who you can tell they have been making posts or they've been interacting with certain groups of people. And so there's like a sort of, it's almost self-referential, right? Like each post that's made by someone connects or they mention someone else that they constantly see and interact with. And like it's funny because like when you were just like, oh, do you use this social media? I hadn't thought of it that way, but I guess I kind of do because I'm like, I know Cody Burkett is going to drop some like history memes that I'm going to like use for myself, if not give to my friends, right? I know these people's names. There was a guy who lived in Nashville. His name is Abe. He was on the news a few times, not about Imager, but just because he had been an advocate for like adoptions, pet adoption. And so I knew about his life and I knew about things going on that was mentioned in the news. And I was like, I know that guy. I responded to his posts. I kind of want to meet this person in real life because we've had enough interactions where I'm like, we could be friends, like in real life. He's moved to Cincinnati now, but doing the same thing, having the same sort of advocacy work, pet adoptions, and because he went through a lot of stuff in his life, and his dog was principal in him getting healthy and changing his life. And so I guess I kind of have been using it as social media. I hadn't considered it, but because it doesn't have the same thing where you go to a subreddit, you can search based upon topics and now you can actually follow people. And
Okay.
so you can get into your own silo, but it doesn't have that it doesn't have the same structure as Reddit or any other place of internet culture, if that makes sense.
So, like, keeping on theme, is there a Black Imager?
I haven't seen one expressly. I've not seen one pop up, but that could just be because I haven't been trying to swim in that circle. Because like if you just go on the homepage, you just go on like, the front page of Imager, you're gonna see a splattering of all different kinds of things. It's when you go into new, that's where I think you start to see certain things. You start to see the parts of Imager that are kind of wacky and crazy. Like it's considered the front lines. Like there is the subclass of people who only browse by new, and they have to sift through things that
Yes.
just aren't funny.
It's so
They're like
chaotic.
more
no,
like
like
the I don't know how to describe them, but they're like the backbone of Imager. Like
they really
they
are.
make the community. They're input.
Yeah, because they're the first people to see a post and either upvote it or downvote it. So it's like people who go to new, they decide what's on like the front page
They're like
because they're
oftentimes
there.
like on the front page, it used to be people would be like thanking the people who sort by new for like keeping the front page like high quality content.
And there have been times where it's been like, we're just going to upvote every piece of trash so everybody knows what's going on down here. And you'll just have a day that's just burped up random stuff that doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy, and it makes me wonder about like the subreddit that you were on. Was there a type of like structure to what your role and like how content is platformed?
Like obviously like all Reddits have a certain amount of rules, and
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to get I don't want to dox myself because people
No,
are
don't.
but
Please don't.
yeah, we just want to make sure like for me I did it a lot during I think it was 2020. I was modding a lot, and so obviously there was a lot of like hate content and like misinformation around COVID, so we just wanted to make sure like the crazies weren't getting too crazy. But I think a rule I really enjoyed on that subreddit was the respect for AAVE. So one thing we didn't allow is for people to complain about AAVE or be like, this person can't speak English, or like, why are they talking like this? Like we would immediately take your comment and be like, rule 7 or whatever it was. Because AAVE has to be respected if you're going to be in that community. And I don't know if that's like something that's like known broadly. And I think AAV is often, I think you have something in your notes here, but AAV is often not thought of as being like proper English, but we wanted to make sure it was like given the treatment it deserved.
Yeah, I wrote about AAV and about how a lot of it feels co-opted for like what we call like Gen Z or like Gen Alpha talk.
Oh yeah. For me, AAV like goes one of two ways, especially when it gets out into like the broader culture. It either goes into what they call like Gen Z or like slang or that sort of thing, or it goes into it like completely gets co-opted by the right. And goes the way of like woke. Like woke, I don't know if people know that woke used to just be like, I'm a black person, you're a black person, and we see what's going on.
Yeah.
And now it's like, a word.
Weaponized.
It's a slur.
Yeah. I love there's a great joke from Cat Williams recently, and he was talking about he was like, what is the opposite of being woke? It's being asleep. You want me out here asleep on the streets? That's crazy. And like, it's funny to me that so many, especially people on the right, complain about it. It's like, well, it's weird to me that people have this like right slanted opinion because it's like how are they co-opting the concept of being like you're aware of what's going on, right? Like they're actively like people shouldn't be aware of what's going on. Like teaching school children that like black people were hurt in this country or like there were Japanese internment camps, that's woke. And it's like that's that's just history. Like what exactly
basically
is bad about what
Yeah.
it is that you're advocating for. When people ask that question, the average right leaning person doesn't always have an answer because they can't really point to it. It's just a slur. It's like, this is woke. It's bad.
Mhm.
Why? Why is it bad that your child knows of the bad things that happened in history? Or why is it bad to acknowledge it? Right? Like, it's very weird to me.
Yeah, it's kind of nonsensical, but it does speak to how memes have the ability to like go from the original context and then like shoot into the world into like a completely all these different contexts. So I had been watching the People's History of Black Twitter docuseries on Hulu. Very interesting was that it sort of recently came out, but I literally had to search up until Black Tea to get to for the search to come up on Hulu, which I noticed that was the same case with Megan the Stallion's documentary on Amazon Prime, even though it had also just come out. But anyway, I found out that the Michael Jordan crying meme was actually because he was crying, referencing his dad who had recently passed away.
Mm.
And he was like acknowledging his dad while receiving like a huge award or something, and he was crying, and that became the Michael Jordan crying meme. And then he like self-referenced it later on, Kobe Bryant's funeral, because
Mhm.
he was in that
Oh,
horrible tragic accident, like
I see. Okay, yeah, I
crash,
think I remember
right?
that.
And it was that funeral where he self-referenced the crying Jordan meme, and it was like this is all so divorced from like the actual tragedy. At the same time, like he's also laughing, the whole room is laughing, and I'm just like, what does it mean that we're just laughing at the memeability of things?
Memes are cultural genetics, right? Like, that's where the term comes from. It's supposed to be analogous to a gene. The memeability of things is like how this is a touchstone that we can use to illustrate a certain feeling or thought. Why do we keep using Michael Jordan crying at this very particular moment in his life? Why are we using it, referencing it? Because it illustrates a certain kind of feeling. Most of the times it's a joke of some kind. When I stub my toe, right? Or, when I need to get gas, but like the bills just hit. But none, like these are all concepts that are different, but they're connected by that feeling. Personally, I think memes are great. And I think the use of things being memeable is a value add because it says our culture is vibrant and alive, right? If we had no memes, would we have a culture?
Potentially Donald Trump's memeability is part of the reason why he never disappeared from the mainstream media.
Huh?
Like, I feel like if we like spoke his name too much or something, like, not that memes are a force for evil, but I
They
think
can be, yeah.
it's a tool.
Yeah, it is a tool. That's very true. And also, I feel like Donald Trump is memeable because he's distinctive. When you think of a politician walking out on a stage, they walk out, they stand there, they do their thing. But then you got Donald Trump who's like, somebody turn up that music, and then he's doing some kind of weird little jig, and you're like, this isn't normal, this isn't expected.
Yeah, he gets away with things that no other politicians have ever gotten away with. What was that Democratic nominee like when we were 8? Said like yeehaw, and like that ruined his whole entire political career. Do you guys remember that?
I remember Fred Thompson in
Howard Dean.
Wow.
Howard Dean.
There's like some 20-year-old who's probably going to yell at us and be like, "How do you not remember Howard Dean?" But yeah,
No.
he was at like a campaign event, and he was like, "Yeehaw!" And like they played it on CNN.
Wow.
Honestly, made him unpresidential. He was like leading the polls, and he just like immediately fell off as the Democratic nominee. And like
Wow.
today, Donald Trump could do anything, and people would
Absolutely.
still vote him.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
just remember Fred
Like,
Thompson having like a speech, and he was talking, and then like he stopped because he was pausing, waiting for applause, and nobody did anything. He was like, "Can I get a damn applause?" And then everybody started clapping, and that was the moment where people were like, "Oh, yeah, he's not going to be president. He's not going to get close." And
Wow.
like, yeah.
Because he like asked for applause one time.
Yeah, well, it was just also funny because he literally was
Well,
like, "Can
yeah.
I get it?" And it's like that's just funny, right? Like,
that kind of
it's
reminds me of, was it Jeb Bush who was like, "Please clap." And that
yes,
that became a
yeah,
meme.
yeah, he did that. Too,
He
yeah,
was like, "Please clap."
My gosh. That's wild. So, I mean, like memes were a thing even before the internet, clearly.
George H.W. Bush had a great campaign video of Michael Dukakis. Like, he decided to go in a tank with like a helmet, like an actual tank helmet, which is massive. So he looked like a weird bobblehead, and they made gear grinding sounds as he was like riding around in this tank. And it's hilarious and funny. And like, it was one of the big campaign like ad memes, quite frankly. It's just a meme that made him seem unpresidential because he's just looking ridiculous in a tank that doesn't work. And the tank was fine, but they added that little bit of spice, and it threw off everything. Like being memeable at some point in American political culture was bad if you were running for high office. But
I think
now
like even Kamala Harris's campaign was, a lot of
very
it was memes. When they like, it was like, how many TikTok views can we get?
Yeah.
The Kamala talk became a thing, so it's almost important that you have memes if you're going to be in politics nowadays, which is definitely different than what it was when we were coming up.
I'm wondering, how do people evaluate the memes that come out of the campaign? Especially if now it's something that if this is going to be the new normal of a campaign being like, we got to make sure we've got some good memes to go on social media. We got to have some sayings. We got to do stuff that transfers. Maybe it's also a function of transmission because now, like you said, like everybody's on TikTok or on something, and memes travel through those things a whole lot faster than just like, this is my campaign platform.
Exactly.
5 boring things that I say in the blandest way possible, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's like a fine line that, authenticity versus, being cringy. It's a very fine line.
Yeah. My goodness, Hillary. I needed her to get off of. Wait, Hillary, put down the phone. Stop. Don't go to the radio show, please.
Yeah, maybe it's authenticity of the memes too, right? Like you can have inauthentic memes and memeing, and then you can have stuff that's like, well, this is who this person is, right?
Yeah. Well, I was startled to hear about the yeehaw thing because it feels so anti Southern. Is it just me? Not necessarily even just Southern, like any kind of Western rural
I guess he was
kind
also
of.
the Democratic nominee, and if you're a Democratic nominee, you have to you got to get the cities, and if the cities aren't vibing with it, maybe that just kicks you out. But also, it was 2004, so it was a completely different time.
Right?
That's true.
And authenticity, like, where is Howard Dean from? He's from
What
like the
was it?
Northeast.
Vermont? Where was he?
Yeah, like I mean,
Vermont?
Vermont is rural, but like, is
True.
anybody in rural Vermont getting on a horse going yeehaw? You kind of have to have a Southern accent if you're going to say yeehaw and not seem ridiculous.
I
Because
honestly don't.
Do you guys remember this or not? Like,
No,
I don't remember this.
don't.
he was from Vermont. Maybe I was
Wow.
just a child who was like always watching the news unnecessarily.
No.
But yeah, it was a thing.
That's so wild.
It's amazing the things that live rent free in our heads because it lives rent free in my head of what's that? The name of that governor from Texas who was like, I'm going to get rid of 3 departments. And then he listed 2 and forgot the third and was like, it's
Oh
like
my god.
the other people on the stage tried to help him. Like, oh, did you mean the department of this? He's like, no, that wasn't it.
Write it
Oops.
down. Like, didn't write it down.
Yeah, he just forgot. And he couldn't even like reason, okay, what could have been the third? He was just like, here are the 3 I'm going to get rid of. 1, 2, huh. Can't remember the third. Well, and like that just lives rent free in my head.
That's so funny. Yeah, so I was just kind of gonna lead from like, is it anti-southern, anti-rural to like, it's a rough transition. Stick with me. How a lot of what the docuseries was talking about was how Twitter was a cultural documentation at the same time as it was a way of activism and just like kind of showing up and being present online about certain things. So I wanted to talk about how a lot of the news stories that were platformed and uplifted on Twitter were from kind of states and areas within states that are not what we think of as like metropolitan necessarily, or like the middle of the United States. So like, for instance, Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. I don't actually know when the last time I saw Ferguson, Missouri on the news was, honestly, since about then. And of course, there was the violence that broke out against protesters in Charleston, South Carolina. And a number of things that happened in Florida, including Trayvon Martin, the Parkland High School shooting, and the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. So all of this to say, like, these are all states that I think when people want to make broad generalizations online, they exclude from being Black or being queer or being this or that. Like, not intentionally, but I think there's a sense of like, oh, Florida's lost cause, so let's just let that go. But no, there are Black people in Florida, there are queer people in Florida, there are people who need things to work and their rights protected.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Twitter and what I think made it good back in its heyday, back when it's still Twitter, was its ability to, if you were a minority group, create like a trend around a minority group could create a trend. That's not something you can actually do on like Imgur. You can't have these like small little cultural moments bubble up on like a larger platform. So you could like raise awareness for local issues on this platform. And then, you know, if you're on the East Coast, someone in California is going to know it at the exact same time. And you'll get that broader visibility. And I think that's something that Twitter did really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I can
agree.
see that.
I also think the level of like community that you were talking about, JT, on Imgur, where you're like, oh, I know that person. I also know some people on Imgur that I just like admire from the comment section, where it's like The Rock, who always speaks in third person, or the Boulder. My bad.
Bold.
It's like a
Well,
riff off of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
yeah.
Yeah, my bad, not The Rock.
Well, I mean, I was literally thinking the Boulder when you were talking
Yeah,
about
my
that.
bad. I misspoke. That level of familiarity at the same time as sort of celebrity. And I think like Twitter was an exciting place because it was like that too, with like actual really, really big celebrities. And one of the ones that people really talk about a lot in this docuseries is Rihanna being on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
And
she stopped.
she just what? She just
She
stopped?
stopped. Yeah, she just stopped being on Twitter. It was just kind of, I don't know. It's like she rose to a certain level of fame and was like, yeah, and you know, kind of stopped interacting with the fans as much, which makes sense probably
Yeah.
for like, you know,
A
at
lot of
some point,
reasons.
a lot of reasons. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was kind of like,
I have like a Blue Sky. I ironically just like start when the news came out when Twitter got bought and like the people who were making Blue Sky were like, we used to work at Twitter. I did sign up because I was like, we hadn't decided yet what Twitter alternative we were all going to. So I hedged my bets. I technically have like a Mastodon and a Threads
Do you have a
that I don't
Spoutable?
use.
I had a Spoutable for a while.
No, I didn't get now. Like, see, there were so many that were popping up. So like
Yeah.
I have Blue Sky and I'm kind of glad that I kind of had already started doing stuff because as soon as celebrities started showing up and they were like, this is what Twitter used to be like. And everyone else was like, oh, I'll just go to Blue Sky. It's something I haven't kept up with it because I'm just not in the habit of checking my
Yeah.
word text based social media.
Yeah.
But I do wonder like if she's gone to Blue Sky because a lot of celebrities, as soon as an
I don't think
exodus
she would
happens,
be. She's got like several businesses to run. I don't know if she would really
Yeah,
be.
I'll say if she returned back to social media, I would know. Other than like posting on Instagram, I feel like I would know. I wouldn't say I'm part of the Navy. Like I'm a fan, but I'm not part of the Navy. But I'd say I'd know if she returned back to social media because she used to have some like really good backs.
that is true.
Yeah, just yeah. But I'm wondering, like the time you have spent on Blue Sky, have you found that it's been able to hone in on these like smaller groups who like really care about this topic the way that Black Twitter has? Because I think I've seen complaints with other alternatives that the BET Awards are on and it wasn't trending anywhere,
Hmm.
or it would like people would see clips a month later. So I'm curious, like, does Blue Sky have a really good way of doing those things in real time?
They are good about funneling users into the communities that they would potentially like. Their algorithm seems to be set up to be like, when you're using this, you will see things that cater to you. I haven't seen like, here's what's trending on Blue Sky. I haven't seen something where everyone can see this is what's moving, this is what isn't moving. But it's also something that I can see that are actively changing, right? Because like if you sign up for Blue Sky, it's very easy to quickly start finding things in people you like. It doesn't do that cross connection. And I think that might be something they're intending to do. Because again, the people who made Blue Sky literally made Twitter. And the Twitter that they had at the end that was doing all of this, that is something that took them a while to make, right? And they did that organically. But this time, they know exactly what they're looking for. And I think that's probably why it sort of went from one contender to like the thing where everyone was like, okay, we're all just going to go to Blue Sky. Because they had been working on a particular experience that has since been changed by the new owner of Twitter, the application formerly known as Twitter.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
think that's one reason why it's sort of grown in prominence. And it's again, like, I just haven't looked at it in a couple of weeks. Maybe that is
Yeah, I'm
something
like,
that
I
they've
don't
already
know if I
started
believe you.
implementing. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if I
mean,
believe you that
yeah.
was the definitive like one that everyone migrated to. I feel
I
like
think it's still being like duped out.
They went
yeah.
from like a couple of million to like tens of millions overnight because it was
You have to think about Threads.
Threads,
Threads
really?
too.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
I don't know how many users they have, but a lot of people were just like, "Oh, it's connected to my Instagram account."
Yeah, like
that's really
Threads.
why I was ever
Threads.
on there. Yeah, that's true. That's the like one of the bigger barriers that there is to like cross-platform audiences, that it's not always all like one integrated thing where all your people you follow. What is lost when you have these like destabilized platforms, you're just never gonna get back the full following that you had. Yeah, I wanted to talk about hashtags. For instance, hashtag Oscars so white. This was originally this comes up in the docuseries, a tweet by April Rain that said hashtag Oscars so white, they asked to touch my hair. And then people kept adding to it saying like hashtags Oscars so white, they wear Birkenstocks in the wintertime and all that. And like remember feeling like really amused by it at the same time as like kind of righteously moved by it. But looking back, I have second thoughts about Oscar So White because I don't I think people received that and then kind of flopped on the doing something about it. Like Hollywood didn't actually, it did get visibly more diverse, I think, but I for some reason feel like the delivery of everything that we wanted with representation wasn't always
I think I want to say they changed the voting process for the Oscars
there.
after that. So there was some level of like, oh, we need to
Response.
fix this, which I feel like, I
That's
don't know,
powerful.
that's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I feel like hashtags are good. They flag visibility, right? And it's like, you're right. I don't think every time a flag is thrown up and somebody's highlighting something, we do not culturally or professionally always change things in accordance. But everybody being aware of something at once, even if there's no additional scrutiny, it does make you be like, okay, well, everybody's watching. So if we only put forth a bunch of like white actors from white movies, people might feel some kind of way because they're already noticing what the makeup looks like. How do we actually come up with this process to make a decision? Do we have some kind of a bias that we just aren't paying attention to? I think I think we should probably have a cultural like this is the official response. This is the automatic response you should have. Like, let me reflect for a second. Everybody's made a hashtag about this. Let me do a little inward searching first before anything else to see is this just something somebody's highlighting to highlight, or is there a greater issue here? Because like knowing what the Oscar process was before, like when Denzel Washington won his first Oscar, he has a joke in his acceptance speech about how many lunches it took. And like for a long time, that's exactly how you got in the running. Like if you had a film or something you wanted to at least get a nomination, let alone win, you kind of had to just pay for it. You had to have a lot of lunches with the people who could vote. You had to give them stuff. You had to do things to make it clear that like you should be a nominee. This is really good. You should see this. But also, here's a $20,000 gift basket. You should really consider this when you make your vote. And most people don't realize that, right? Most people didn't realize that the joke was also highlighting the truth, that there was a level of there's merit here. We can all agree that all these nominees are cool, but also if you didn't have the money to pay the
To
voters
schmooze.
to schmooze, maybe
Yeah.
your movie wouldn't even be considered.
Part of bringing up like that specific hashtag Oscar So White, was to talk about there's like social media and then there's like established institutional media like Hollywood. And, sometimes worlds collide, but I also think about how institutions react to what happens on social media, and how a lot of times the problem is only because it is trending, and so how do we damage control from there? It's not like necessarily trying to long term address the core of the issue, which is why are Oscars so white? And I think, the other part about that hashtag that my like literary brain was thinking about, it centers whiteness in that hashtag because we're describing whiteness, which is non-existent. Like there's no like actual real like defining thing about whiteness other than white supremacy. So like when they say like, oh, Birkenstocks in the wintertime with socks, maybe it's like solidifying the idea that there is more of a unified whiteness. I don't know.
It's a good call out to
Yeah.
call it white because a lot of people walk around in their whiteness. And it's kind of like that comic where the fish is in water and they're like, the water is really clear today. And the other fish is like, what's water?
Yeah.
I think when you like call it out, like you're being really white right now, it forces them to like reflect, which
Mm,
whiteness doesn't usually require. You can just exist. You can just be unique or like yourself, and you don't have an identity and you don't need to be called out. So I personally appreciated the like calling it for what it was, but I can see your point.
yeah. I mean, I like it because it does seem to hold that mirror up on whiteness. But I also am, I guess, worried because even though it's not necessarily written by white people for white people, there will be a white audience to a lot of tweets. I was thinking about this with Black Twitter. Like, there are certain things that I wonder if people outside of Black Twitter should have ever gotten their hands on. I just think that, for instance, there was that situation with Andrew Schultz, the comedian on that podcast, saying some messed up things about Black women as girlfriends, and also like which African tribe is the sneakier one or something. All things that I have a theory that he heard someone else say it in a context of being around Black people. And then he was like, oh, that seems like it's from the source. This seems like the insider info on Black culture. Here we go. Let me just say it again. But to say, like, I'm the in group. I just think there's certain things that we shouldn't have to cater to the white gaze, but I wonder if
it's kind of like
should be
the
available to the white
conversation
gaze.
around gatekeeping. Like,
Yeah.
should we be explaining this? Most of the time, probably not. Like, we don't have the context.
But it's, even if you don't explain it, people will potentially see it.
Yeah, they'll take it, and they'll like take it the way of woke, right? Like, they'll just bastardize it to some point. And yeah, I think there's like a movement to be like, don't explain your thing. And because like, I think there's always like a joke of like someone's blackfishing online, and you can tell because like they're using AAVE incorrectly, or like the grammar is off. You're like, so it's kind of like it's like, we see you, we know, and it's a matter of like, because we get gate kept, and maybe we should keep doing that.
And also, this is a legitimate sort of question / thought, because it's like the white gaze is just ever present, because for better or worse, the Western world is, has taken over most of the world. And the white gaze is built in. It's a part of it, right? Like Black Twitter was not meant to cater to the white gaze, but its popularity and the reason why it became a thing writ large is because of the white gaze. And it's like, no one was trying to be like, hey, white people, here's the ends on those of us who are not white. It was just people doing their own thing, and it being popular amongst these people. And then this whole group of people that didn't really have a reason to look over, but could see, was like, this is interesting, right? I want to participate in this. I want to observe this. I want to, I say the word consume, and I realize that sounds awful, but like, I want to absorb what it is I'm seeing, right? Like, all of the things that have been cool in America since forever have typically been Black things that have been relabeled, right? Like jazz was just music Black people were giving to each other. And then all of a sudden, everybody wanted to participate in it. And it's one of those things where I wonder if it's possible to avoid it in the first place.
Well, okay, there's a difference between writing to the white gaze and then not considering the white gaze at all. Like The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, there's not really a white person or gaze to speak of necessarily, except for like side characters at the most.
Yeah.
And I think originally it was supposed to be like that, Black Twitter. But let me give you a maybe slightly similar situation. For instance, there was or maybe continues to be a Asian American or like Asian diaspora geared subgroup or like Facebook group or something called Subtle Asian Traits. And it talks about like, it shares memes about being Asian and Asian American or in any kind of diaspora where you're in an English speaking country and you're Asian. And a lot of times, just because of like immigrant struggles, it tends to be like ragging on your first gen immigrant parents, talking about like, oh, you're Asian, not a Bijan or whatever, right? So let's say some non-Asian person looks into that, sees that, and then spits back to me that kind of like sort of xenophobic and stereotypical thing about Asian parents. I would be kind of upset. I feel like, let's fight. So I'm saying, like, isn't that a thing as well? Like, isn't there some things that we got to figure out, like, I want to figure out amongst us Asians, like, why are our parents racist? Let's talk about it. I don't necessarily want a white gaze in that room when I do that.
True.
So I'm wondering, like, isn't that a thing? Like, aren't there certain toxic things that get put under a microscope within specific cultures that you don't want to discuss with the white gaze around?
Of course, there are, like, obviously those things.
Absolutely.
We call it mixed company. Mixed company.
See, right? Yeah.
And so it's like sometimes people, abide by the mixed company rule, and then sometimes they don't. Obviously, like, people online are going to act how they act, and we can't, like, police folks. And I think, with social media, we can't really control whether someone, like, comes onto our side of the internet, takes things out of context. I think it's important for us to, like, hold the line, though, like what Andrew Schultz did on that podcast and, like, did with the podcast host. They didn't hold the line. They forgot who their audience was, which was mainly Black women. I mean, even if they didn't forget, but they should have responded differently. Definitely, if they wanted to keep the platform they had. From my understanding, they lost a lot of their audience based on their reactions, and they didn't know how to act in front of mixed company.
Yeah, and it's something where maybe it's the Star Trek nerd in me, but I'm like, my parents, and I know a lot of Black parents, are a little racist too. So, like, when you say this is a conversation that we're having in this particular community, it's something where I'm like, hey, I've got the same problem. It's something where I see a similarity between us, not in spite of our differences or because of our differences. It's just, this is something we both share. But then also, I'm not white. I don't have the white gaze. I would never see something in this place and be like, I'm just going to repeat it back to Lucia or somebody else that I see. It's something where I'm like, I've seen it and I know it and I know it exists, but I don't need to, like, participate in it, right? Like,
right. Yeah.
And maybe that's the difference. Maybe the white gaze is like, I see it so I can participate in it because I can see it. Whereas other groups of people, because I don't even think, like, if there was a separate thing called Bi Twitter, you wouldn't have people in Bi Twitter talking about things that are going on in the Pan Twitter, right? Or the Ace Twitter. Like, it's something where different groups of people, even though they see kinship with each other, do not automatically go, because I can see it, I can comment on it or participate in it. I would never think to myself, it's okay for me to see a meme from a Cantonese person talking about Mandarin speakers and, like, be a part of that joke. Like, that's not a joke.
No.
I can't, right?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Like, the onus can only be so much on someone who wrote an original tweet at any point, right? Like, there's also a certain discernment from people who see it to not just be a parrot.
Right.
You heard it here, folks. If you see something, just don't talk about it.
If you're not the audience, know when you're the audience.
Yes.
And know when you're not the
audience. 100%.
That's also another just general issue with navigating social media spaces, is that, like, everyone wants to talk shit. Everyone wants to say something. And then there's, like, just lurkers. And then, like,
everyone wants to have a hot take. Everyone wants that.
And sometimes it's oversaturated.
Yes. And sometimes a lot of takes aren't very good.
Yes.
Yeah. Most takes aren't very good.
I agree. I was thinking about almost like a year ago, maybe, that Cat Williams interview, where he declares this is the year of the truth. And then I feel like it was such a blur, 2024. But I do think a lot of things did come out. Like, there was a lot of truth, but I also think there was just a lot of shit talking and noise that I did not necessarily need to hear or learn the gossip on.
We should all know less about each other, is what you're saying.
I'm not opposed to that.
No, it's not that we should know less. It's that there's only so much we can know if we're not in someone's relationship.
That's true.
It's true.
That's true. Like,
so, like, why are we all commenting on this celebrity relationship or something?
Yeah, because, like, I feel like we've talked about on the podcast, like everything that happened around like Will and Jada, my first thought was, why are we talking about this? Why do we
Mine
need to talk about
too.
this?
I was like, they don't have a problem with it. Why do
Yeah.
I care?
I'm like, this is someone who is saying on, their podcast, here's some struggles that I faced, and here's how I faced it in my life, and here's the context. Probably more just to be like, we're human beings, and this is something humans go through. But then everybody had a lot of very strong, deeply felt opinions. And it's like, where is this coming from? Like, are you going to talk? Yeah, it's like, are we going to talk about like are we going to talk about like what the king of Russia was doing? Right? Like, are we going to have the same kind of takes about like long, past historical events or like, what are we doing here? Why are we talking this strongly about this person's reality and like having such a visceral emotional reaction? Like, a reaction happens, right? The action reaction, but why is it so deeply felt? I still don't get that. But
me personally, when I see, I know that was like a trending topic for like probably a month or more, but with things like that, something I do is I just stop engaging with it. Like, I'm like, I don't get it, and then I just forget about it because I'm just like, this is weird.
It was seeing jokes about like Tupac dodging that bullet. I was like, what? Where is this? What is this? What are you talking about? What is happening right now? Why is this coming up of all things?
I am also one of those people who I like to curate my algorithm. So I tell my algorithm what I want. And that's why I never fully got into TikTok, because I'm like, oh man, I have to train this all over again. And then it's going to take a while before it shows me the things I actually want. Never mind, I'm tired. So, I think there's a level of like conscious consumption that is taken out of your hand with algorithms, but also you can train your algorithm.
Yeah, and I think people need to know more that their algorithm is in their hands. I was just watching this creator who did like an experiment, and he was like, how long does it take for me to get a feed that's entirely of bunnies? And I think it was less than an hour. He would upvote animal videos, and it's like the closer to, and he started getting only animal videos. And then finally it was like, okay, now the animals that are closer to bunnies, I'll engage with. And eventually, like before the end of the hour, he had like only bunnies on his feed. So we have so much control over our algorithm. Wow. And if you're seeing stuff you don't like on your feed, you need to think about like what content you're engaging with. Yeah. Because mine's lovely.
Yeah.
I love having multiple accounts too. So like one is for like news and politics, and one is for like cute animals.
Good idea. I should do that.
That is a good idea.
Curate different accounts for different moods, because something that I really struggled with, especially in these times, is like triggering violent videos alongside memes and like frivolous gossip. And it's the whiplash hurts. It's so bad. I feel numb at the end of that.
For me, it's the fact that like the bleed over from my algorithm, like I've been curating my like YouTube reels really hard because I started to notice the things. It felt okay. I'm going to spill some tea on myself. Apparently, I'm consuming the kind of content that is like right at the start of the like white supremacist incel pipeline.
No, that's a problem.
And so like, because I'm like, the number of times where like I've been following like lawyer content, right? And just last night I realized this one lawyer that I saw one time before. I was like, I'm looking at this and I'm getting a vibe I don't like. And it's the fact that these two videos have a similar like endpoint, to the point where I was like, let me just click the downvote button and I hope I don't see him again, because I have had to be like, don't recommend this channel. The news, I'll get like a news reel and I'm like, you go on their page and they're like openly like, we are a libertarian news source that has the real news. And I'm like, you have an open slant that you think qualifies as like being objective? That's not good news. That's not a healthy publication. Yeah.
I will say I had a very similar experience when I started. I don't use YouTube Shorts very much anymore, but it was crazy that when I first started using it, it was like immediately I got kind of like they were like testing the waters almost, where I was like, I kind of understand what you're saying. And then the woman who was talking said something that was like, I was like, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
And then I like went to their page and then I did some more research. And then I found out they were kind of like alt-right adjacent. And I was like, absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
but it was crazy that it was within the first like day or two that I had started using YouTube Shorts that was the content that was pushed to me.
Okay, so that's not
Wow.
just me.
No, there's
It
a lot of
wasn't like
different
a
ways
thing.
it can go into alt-right. You can go from like Hinduism meditation to alt-right, honestly.
And then
That's the
also like
thing.
health content like slowly gets into like there's like an anti-vaxxer alt-right pipeline. There's a vegan alt-right pipeline. There's so many pipelines into
JT, I'm sorry.
the right. But it's like, you know, even if like even just random content, you never know where it's going to end up. Because like there's even like beauty influencers who are like, you know, all of a sudden you're getting like recommendations for super like evangelical Christian beauty influencers, and all of a sudden, you know, that like leads into the alt-right pipeline. So there's so many ways you can go that route.
Is it just more memeable? Is that what, like, I don't super.
Well, no, I'm not sure. And I almost wonder if it's like something I noticed. I meant to put this in my notes, but something I noticed back in like 2011, like the natural hair movement was a thing on social media. And the people I followed at the time, you know, they just did like hair tutorials and all of that, but all of them seemed to get radicalized by the algorithm. So eventually, most of them were Black creators, but they moved into like a Hotep, which is like, you know, Hotep is kind of like, it is kind of like right adjacent. And I thought that happened to like at least two of the creators, where they
Wow.
just became like Dr. Umar, Dr. Sebi,
Oh my gosh.
and it's like
You
that's
know what it could be? Something that's to pull like a poli-sci bend on it. Something that the American right does is their arguments, their argumentation, and what they believe how society should operate is almost entirely emotionally based. There's never anything about like, okay, homelessness is a problem for this reason, for social things. It's like homelessness is disgusting. We should reject it. It's never let's evaluate a problem based upon certain merits or standards that we can all agree to. It's always that visceral emotional reaction. And I think a lot of algorithms are based on getting an emotional reaction from a user to keep them in or to have them continue to use it. And so it's like if you're not even like, I'm trying to capitalize on anger, I'm just trying to capitalize upon human emotional reaction. Like you're going to see something that will make you feel very deeply
and stay engaged.
and stay engaged. I think right-leaning content that's already in favor of right-leaning content because everything that the very base of everything that they're doing starts off from an emotional standpoint, from I am immediately disgusted or immediately overjoyed by this thought, right? And maybe I think that might be connected. I feel like it's probably 15 different things.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, like if this is the direction we're falling, maybe it's less malice and more just happenstance, right?
Well, this is kind of the counterpoint to that. I wanted to ask you, Blanche, about navigating online spaces at the intersection of being Black and a woman, or any of your friends who might be in any various intersection in that way where it just becomes hostile.
Once in a while, I'll like venture over to someplace and I'm like, maybe like Reddit. I'll go on the like conservative subreddit just to see what they're talking about, see what they're talking about. But for the most part, I try to stay on like very like niche subjects, like, you know, home decor or like plant care, maybe fashion, or like sometimes there's some like vloggers I follow. So for me, I don't get like, you know, hostile content, and, you know, my personal accounts don't have that many followers, just mainly people I know. So, you know, I treat my Instagram like a group chat, like here are updates on my life to people I care about, sort of thing. So yeah, I personally, like, that's how I treat social media. I know others, especially if you're like really out there and like fighting for a cause, and on the forefront, and like you're creating those hashtags for the first time, I can see how you can get a lot of hate. But for me personally, I don't feel like I have a whole lot of issues navigating that space. And also, I mean, I've always been a Black woman, so maybe it's just something I do. And also, I don't take things personally, so I probably block out a lot of stuff that I've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice for just generally navigating online spaces. Like, you don't have to venture out to places where you are potentially going to be harassed.
And to me, like, my journey, my story is not to convince people of my humanity. I know some people are willing to take that journey. That's not me. So that also keeps me sane.
I love that journey. I am into this. I feel like people do all this like vision board manifesting, but let's manifest into our algorithms what we want to see.
I don't have a choice. I'm a sci-fi nerd, and there's just no way to stick
Yeah.
to like the number of Star
Fandoms,
Trek.
is that what
Like,
it is? Yeah.
it's like and like certain, like the Star Trek fandom has this weird problem where like it seems like a surprisingly high number of people are intolerant, and it's like, dude, this whole thing is about enjoying differences, and you're over here upset that this character isn't a white dude. And
Wow.
like it,
Yeah.
and it's a response from the creators who are like, but y'all, we all signed up for this because we like people who are different. And then like they have to respond to this. And it's like I can't avoid it.
That kind of reminds me, there was a conversation happening on book talk, because turns out some people are reading fiction books and they don't expect there to be any sort of messaging, any sort of like moral to the story, any sort of like political leaning. So they're reading The Hunger Games and they're just like, it's a story about a girl who went to an arena and killed some people. Like, that's how they're reading the story. And people are like, what do you mean? That's all you got from the story? They're like, and I don't know. It's interesting because Star Trek is very similar, and it's like it has this very, what we consider very obvious messaging. But people are also reading like 200, 300 page books and also coming away with similar thoughts of, this doesn't apply to my life at all.
Huh. That is
Yeah. So I have two specific questions, and then we can try to wrap up our time together. I really appreciate everyone engaging with
After your questions, I have a quiz for y'all.
Yes, let's do it. So first question is, any advice or thoughts around misinformation online?
I'll let you
I know
go.
that's a huge one.
Misinformation. My first thought is, if you're looking up a fact, do not use the Google AI generator nonsense. Please don't. Like, if it's about health, if it's about a date, AI chatbots are not good enough at this point to give back facts and give back proper citation. So if you can, look at the actual abstract or look at the paper.
Agree. I've been seeing, I have a lot of like history fact reels on Instagram, and there's been a rise in just AI generated history content. It's written by AI, the images are generated by AI. It's not fact checked. Obviously, it's just like whatever's most likely to be the next word. So you think it's like a polished thing with actual facts, but it's not. So if you are looking at like history reels, just be on the lookout if it's being read by AI and like everything looks AI-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a question of knowing how to evaluate sources. I think people don't know how to look at something and discern where the truth is within it. And
Yeah.
it's not a hard skill to learn, perhaps hard to master, but yeah.
Well, also a lot of these like news institutions that were considered reliable sources have devalued their own services.
Very true.
It's become more difficult for sure. I guess the last question was about like, what place does democracy or equity have in policies and features on like hashtags or verified accounts?
I think it's really important. I think it's important for especially like underrepresented groups to be represented in these platforms, if possible, be part of building them. Don't be afraid to complain about what you're seeing in your algorithm. If you keep getting weird content, call it out and raise the red flag. These tech companies are looking at it. They need our voices. We make these platforms fun and exciting and culturally relevant. And if we're not having a good time, people leave.
Well, I'm ready for the quiz.
Woo! Okay.
Yeah.
So I put together a little quiz for y'all just to test your Black Twitter knowledge with some fun tweets that have been popular. So my first question is, who is this tweet from? Okay, are y'all ready? My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding. So just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision. Not bullied.
Remember this.
You know who this is.
It's
Trinidad? Is
My
that
cousin in Trinidad.
is that Rihanna?
Was it Nicki
It's really
Minaj?
close. You're kind of close.
Was it Nicki Minaj?
It was Nicki Minaj.
Yes.
All right.
Thank God.
September
Shout out to
2021.
Nicki Minaj's cousin. Hope
Yeah.
he's okay.
This has become like a copy pasta across the internet, but in September 2021, Nicki made this famous tweet.
That was a good one. Wow.
Yeah. Her cousin
Okay.
literally just had some STD. Like, let's be honest.
Right. The next one is kind of a complete the phrase. It's call and response. So here we go. Excuse me, ma'am, not to be disrespectful or rude, but could you please take this post down? That is my sister who got killed by a metro train, and this post is very disrespectful. I don't know who you are or if you even know her, but I need you to take this post down, please. No?
It's not ringing any bells.
No? The metro train? No?
No, I don't remember.
Okay, I guess I'm way too deep into internet culture, but the answer is, baby, this is Keke Palmer.
Oh, I remember this.
Keke Palmer? No?
Oh, I do remember this.
Lucy is dying. Do you know Baby Keke Palmer meme?
Yeah.
I did not know about this. What?
Anyway, so this tweet is from Trixie number 9. Essentially, someone posted a picture of Keke Palmer in her glasses back when she was doing press for Akilah and the Bee. And someone wrote this long tweet about taking this post down because it's her sister who got hit by a metro train. And the response was, baby, this is Keke Palmer. Yeah. Okay, I don't think y'all are going to get the next one, though.
I mean, I do remember that. It's just deep. It's buried under a lot.
I'm sorry. Okay.
It must have been a little while back if this was Akilah and the Bee.
Well, yeah. I think that one was like, I don't know, it was like probably 2022.
Yeah, like the pandemic memes, I saw them, but it's like time didn't really work then. So it's just like a soup. So just like, it's in here. Like, yeah. I do remember this.
Just hit us with the next one.
Your last one is, okay, I like this tweet. Okay. It's another call-in response. It said, ew, she effing the weed man for weed. Said the...
Wait, it's in here somewhere. Hang on.
Okay. It says, quotation, quote, ew, she effing the weed man for weed, end quote. And then dash, what's the next sentence? All right. 3, 2, 1. A bitch that's fucking the text man for text.
Okay.
You guys remember that one?
Dude, yeah. I can see an image in
wow.
I can remember the offshoot memes to these things because it wasn't just like a bunch of people.
Was like the original.
Yeah, because I can remember.
I just got a glance into a window into a whole other world on the internet.
At least you got the first one, JT. So JT won.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a little badge. You guys aren't as chronically online as I am, but that's okay.
See, like, yeah, because I can remember offshoot memes to like, oh, this is my cousin so and so. She died after like one hit of marijuana, and it's like that's just Taylor Swift. And like, it's like I can remember other things that are connected to this.
Yeah, like the grandfather meme that the other meme spawned from.
That was excellent. That was most cursed.
I'm just gonna text you now, baby.
Maybe that's just Keke Palmer.
Keke Palmer.
That was fantastic. Thank you so. That was so much fun.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget, we are here out of love. Let us know what's bothering you, Baltimore. Maybe we can address it next time.
Yeah, and send us an email at what's.wrong.bemore@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at what's.wrong.bemore, BMORE. And, if you have suggestions, we are accessible through Patreon as well. So until next time, hope you take care and find little ways to indulge.